Hi, everybody.
Hello, good morning. How's everybody doing? My name is Nathan Boji. I'm with Remax Classic, GMAR member. I'm chair of the technology committee and soon to be part of the grievance committee.
Okay. I'm Peter Toring from Coble Banker out in Macomb Township. I am also on the tech committee. And you'll have to excuse my voice is a little bit worn out today, so I'm just going to hang on the best I can here.
Yeah, Peter's been doing the speaking tour, nonstop podcast all week.
So what we are, Greater Minds Live, is a show we discuss all the things real estate and what's going on with your realtor board here in Southeast Michigan market. We're going to answer any questions. Feel free to jump in during the broadcast, post your comments. If you got any comments, questions, concerns, things like that, we'll try and answer them. And of course, we're a member-supported show, and like the logo says behind us, we are, part of the board here, but our opinions are Nathan and I's opinions. It's not necessarily the opinions of the board.
Exactly. And if you'd like to come back and listen or watch the video or listen to the podcast, you can find them on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, all of those different types of facets. Or come back to the Greater Minds Live page or the GMAR YouTube channel, and you will find the videos there as well.
Yeah. Got a couple cool things to cover today.
First
one, we want to refer you to a couple of things. We're not particularly going to discuss them here, but the new GMAR magazine that went out has got a couple of cool things that we might want to direct you to.
Yeah, the Realtor Metropolitan Magazine. You should have received that in your email yesterday. There's a couple things in there, really good topics, really pertinent stuff that's going on in our industry. Specifically for our state, the new advertising rules. There's a nice, I think, 3 or 4 page spread in there with how it all works. So really important information, really easy to understand too. A lot of good graphics that show you what it should look like and what it shouldn't look like. There's also a section in there about some of the tax reforms, the changes that are coming up and how those will apply to homeownership. So, when your clients talk to you about it, you can have a really, good answer and that type of thing. And then one other topic that's kind of hot in the last day or two is the whole net neutrality thing and how that's going to, roll out and what may or may not affect our industry as real estate.
We had a discussion about this before the show started, and we just felt that we weren't informed enough to tell you one way or the other. But NAR does have some good stuff. Can we post the link out, Tim? I think we can post the link out to the video on that. We'll get that out to you later on.
Yeah, it's on the NAR Facebook page. It's about a 25 or 30 minute long conversation between a few different folks from NAR. Really interesting information, regardless of what side of it you're on.
Yeah, and just so you can at least be educated again and understand how it affects us in our industry. So we want to, of course, in the interest of giving you awesome dive in, use today content, we want to talk about managing client expectations both on the buy and on the sell side. This is something that every realtor goes through, whether it's buyers that just won't seem to commit, listings that just can't seem to get off the market. But it's really important that we set that expectation with our clients first thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that seems to boil down to answer a lot of the issues that come up during transactions, is that the client's expectations weren't set right from the get-go, and they start to get off in left field, if you will, about what is actually happening and start, making decisions about whether something is working and it's actually not working or vice versa. So, as Peter and I were talking about this earlier, we said, setting those expectations of what to do is really important. So, one of those things, we'll take the buyers first. Peter, he does a really great thing. He does a must meet required 1 hour buyer consultation meeting prior to doing anything.
And I think this is really important. It's just as important as getting pre-qualified, because number one, I'm going to go through the process with the buyer. I work with a lot of first-time home buyers, so I think it's very important that they understand, okay, what's actually going on here? A leads to B leads to C. What are the hurdles that can happen at each one of them? And what's going to cost you money? Do you have, hey, I had the home inspection. I didn't know I had to pay $500 for home inspection. I didn't know I have to pay for this. So not only that, but also it's a way to gauge buyer readiness, I'm going to call it. So understanding that we're not going to be going out and seeing 75 homes, and getting to know, hey, listen, is this buyer actually ready to buy, or are they just looking around?
Yeah, I mean, and that's important on multiple levels. One, it educates the buyer so that way they know what to be expecting and what to do at the different points of the transaction, whether it's looking at homes, having the home inspection, negotiating different terms of their offers, closing, that type of thing. But what it also does for you is it sort of gives you a plan of how to conduct your business, in the sense that if you take the time to set those expectations, ask them the questions that are necessary, when are you looking to buy? Are you pre-approved? What is the house that you're wanting to live in look like? All of those qualifying questions, if you will, are going to save you a lot of time, allow you to better serve your buyer, and ultimately get them successfully into a home that they're really going to be happy with and potentially turn into a referral for you.
Yeah. The other two things that I really like to go in a buyer consultation. Number one, if you've got more than one, I call them decision makers. So if you got a husband and a wife, you got two parties going through.
Or mom and dad in the first time buyer
right.
situation.
Yeah, that's another. That's a great point. We've got a lot of first time buyers. Mom and dad are either chipping in money or they've got strong opinions on what son and daughter-in-law, or whatever should do.
Absolutely.
I'd even like parents to be there if they're going to be involved in the decision making. Whoever the decision makers, I like them to be there because that way we can go through. Do we have conflict?
Right.
Does party A want hardwood floors and party B likes carpet? A likes a ranch and B likes colonial. Get those out in the open right now and talk about a compromise so that we're not 5 houses in and husband likes all 5 and wife likes none of them or the opposite, or and that way we have everything out in the open. We know, okay, this is what we're going to have as a contention point and this is how we solve it. And also if we know that we've got something that both parties are really set on, and sometimes too, I like to go through the whys. So, okay, do you actually need a huge kitchen or do you need a large entertaining space?
Right.
Do you actually need to be on 5 acres or do you just need a private backyard? I think these things are really important.
Yeah, it definitely helps when buyers, when they're sitting around talking about, oh, this is the kind of house that we want to buy amongst themselves. It's like when we're, just as regular consumers going around thinking about buying something, we can kind of get off, letting the hopes and dreams sort of take over what really makes sense to go out and buy. And that happens to our clients all the time. So if we can kind of help them filter out the wants and needs and get the property that they need with some of those wants sprinkled in there, I think is really beneficial. It's going to help them make a great decision on a house. It's going to keep them educated, and an educated buyer is going to ultimately probably be less headache down the road because they're going to know what they're in for.
I think also setting the expectation of what's realistic in their price range, especially for first time buyers, letting them know, listen, absolutely. It's not HGTV. We're not going to come into a house that's 100% done.
Right.
And also on the flip side of things, I have 95% of my first time buyers, I swear, I think, tell me I'm looking for a fixer upper.
Yes.
I want to knock out walls, and maybe 5% do.
Right.
Maybe less.
Yes.
So setting those expectations now that, okay, we can, yes, this is realistic. This is not. This is realistic in your budget. And the other thing too is I like finding out, in my, I have this weighted categories of, amenities or updates to the house.
Sure.
Location, and price. Mm-hmm. So we really have these things, and amenities will include size. So which of these 3 things is, if we don't have an unlimited budget and an unlimited time frame, which of these is most important, and which are we willing to be flexible?
Yep.
Can we be a little bit flexible in price? Can we be a little bit flexible? Can that 30-minute drive be a 40-minute drive? Or do we really need the granite countertops? And what's really important to that client? I think is
absolutely. I mean, you bring up some great points there, Peter, as far as what features of the home are really important, and should you toss out a perfectly good house for one of those features not being present? So, can you get the great house? You love every other thing about the house, but it doesn't have the granite countertops, and the carpet, sort of resembles grandma's, vomit green shag carpet that she used to have. Can you get the great house, swap out those countertops and clean up the carpet and still, be in your budget and have what you want? Those are all things that it's good to talk to, especially first-time buyers about. So I guess in short, for the buyers, really, it's to sit down and make sure you get all that information out of them and give them the things that they need to be aware of going through this process.
Yeah. And I think also it's letting them know this is what you need to know, and this is also what you need to not do.
Sure, absolutely,
the deadly sins of buying.
Yes, and I'm sure we all have a lender friend that's out there that's told you the story of we were 10 days out from closing and the purchaser went and leased a brand new car or bought a brand new car or bought a house full of furniture on credit from ABC Warehouse or something like or Art Van. So those are important because you don't want to have to deal with that 10 days out from closing because it creates a whole lot of problems. So having those conversations is super important, and there's a lot of benefit to both yourself as a business person, but also as the buyer being able to understand what they're getting themselves into before they're in too deep. on the other side of the table, you have to do the same for sellers.
Yeah.
You know, when you're going into a listing appointment, it gets interesting because yes, we're all competing, to get a listing, and possibly there's 2, 3, 4, 5 other agents walking in that door, trying to earn the listing. So we're pushing really hard. We're touting our services and things like that, which is fantastic. But I think an important thing too, in the listing and presentation portion and talking with sellers, is to set those expectations of how that marketing is going to go. And
I actually start this before I ever meet with a client. We're doing podcasting here, but I have my own series of podcasts, and it
hence the voice.
Exactly. It goes through, it details for a buyer or a seller. We go into in depth on topics that I won't have time to do in the listing appointment. So what we'll do is, if I know I have a listing appointment coming up, I'll send them the link. Say, hey, if you really want to know in depth about staging, or if you really want to know in depth about what repairs you should or should not do, or you really want to know
like a really personal pre-listing package.
Exactly. So they've already got that there, so they know going in that they've got the information if they want it, and then once we've got that, it also establishes, of course, our credibility. And then once we go in, not only managing expectations, I'm sure we'll talk about price in a second, but also managing expectations. But I go over my marketing plan and being realistic with what my marketing plan actually does. I think a lot of us oversell our marketing plans, and that our marketing plan is the greatest, best thing that the world has ever seen. I really like to be realistic. And the best way I think to be realistic about your marketing plan is I got to track my numbers.
Yep. Yeah. Knowing your business is super important, because you're going to find out what works, what doesn't work, right, and be able to show that to a potential seller and say, hey, this is what's actually getting the house sold.
Yeah.
I think sometimes as realtors, we fall into because we have a hammer, everything's a nail, mindset, meaning, we're do anything and everything we can do, which obviously we want to do whatever we can do to help the seller get their home sold for the most money in the least amount of time. But at the same time, certain tools are going to do a better job than others, and you have to know what works. Maybe your Facebook ads are killing it. Maybe maybe your mailers that you send out are killing it. Maybe your connections to your sphere of influence are working. But if you don't know what is working, it could hurt both you as a business person and the seller.
I view it as not tracking your numbers when it comes to listings is like going to an open house and not taking people's names down.
Sure.
It creates, it's not a worthless activity, but it's a much less productive activity.
Yep.
And I think that's the big thing here is we want our activities to be as productive as possible, and to focus. If I can put more effort, if it's going to cost me $100 in mailers, but I can get the same or better effect out of $100 on Facebook, or vice versa in some neighborhoods, right, that's what I'm going to do. I want to make sure that my money is going towards the things that are productive, instead of just tossing a little bit of $5 into each pot.
Yep. And another part too of setting expectations for sellers is talking to them about the process of their home being listed, what to expect with the schedule of, okay, we've got the paperwork signed. How are we taking photos? Is the realtor coming and doing it themselves? Are they having a photographer come in? What does that entail? What should the house look like? And then as you get to the point where it's actively listed, what to expect with showings, who's contacting them to schedule the showing, when are the showings going to take place, are there any special times during the day, maybe something that's going on with kids with school or nap times or whatever it might be, maybe somebody works in a late shift and they're sleeping during the middle of the day, to talk to them about how to schedule, but also talk to them about how important it is to make your home as available as possible to get it sold, because the more people that can get in there and look at it, the better for them, and the right people, obviously. But so talking about that process of having their home listed, I think is really important, so that way they're not surprised by anything that might take place.
Right. And in that, I think that of course the big one is a price expectation. I think that's what we're seeing more than anything with, well, really two things: listings that aren't selling, at least in our market in Macomb County. Number one, price is wrong. Number two, the property is just too unique and the buyer base is small. Mm-hmm. And I think that setting an expectation with a client about that. So let's take this. How do you set an expectation with a price? Obviously, so you've sat down with the seller, you've shown them your comparative market analysis. How do you then say, okay, this is the expectation you should have with this price?
Yeah, I think, and a big part of setting that expectation is just what you said, Peter, as far as sitting down with the CMA and letting them see exactly what is happening in their market, with houses that are similar to them, and how quickly they're selling, how much money they're actually selling for, And really, how does it compare apples to apples with the house next door that sold versus their house? And when you show them the information that comes directly from the market, it's much more valuable. And I think it sinks in a little bit more than just sort of talking about it and touting it, because then it's your opinion and so forth. It's not something proven that here's 15 homes that sold and here's what happened.
I think you bring up a really great point there about how long did it take them for it to sell? Because if you've got a market analysis and you've got a house that's, let's just say it's worth $260,000, you got a 250, you got a 275, you got a 28, you've got all these houses. The buyer might immediately say, okay, I want to, the top price.
Right.
Well, but if you've got a different timeline, if that house took 205 days to sell and you've got to be out of your house in 3 months, I always say that price is a timeline. How fast you need to sell, and how, I always use the analogy for us. We have Lake St. Clair. We've got our top water that's moving real fast. We got kind of that middle water channel that's not moving as fast, but it's still moving. And then you got the stuff that's sitting on the bottom. You don't want to be sitting on the bottom.
Yeah, it's time and price are relative. The longer you wait, the longer it takes, the less you probably are going to get. And then you might have the seller might have the ability to wait forever. Some people, I think, just listing their home for sale is a sport, and they just want to see how long they can last. It's like
how much can we get for it? Can we get that lightning strike buyer?
Exactly.
I think also too, I do go over the market stats. Okay, what are the actual days on market, and what are not just the days on market for your county, but for your zip code, for homes like yours, for 4-bedroom, 2,500 square foot houses. What's the days on market there? Yeah. And I think that's important.
Yeah, important stats. And, so you've got the expectations, you've talked to them at the listing presentation. They're understanding what the listing process is going to be all about. You've got the home listed. You've knocked it out of the park. Now you've got an offer. And letting them know the expectations of how an offer is going to work, what they're likely to see from a buyer, what the purchase agreements are going to have in them, different terms that they have to be aware of, and then ultimately getting through those different steps to the closing table.
I think one of the ways to do this, and I know it's not fun, and I know a lot of sellers don't want to do it. They just want to, okay, hey, sign my offer and go. I think going through the fine print of the purchase agreement is important.
Sure. I might be speaking a little out of school here, but 15 years or so ago, purchase agreements from brokerage to brokerage were relatively similar. A lot of folks use the board purchase agreement, so you could pretty much say, "Oh, this is going to be in here." That is not the case today, and it hasn't been for a number of years. Where you might think I might get a purchase agreement from your office today, and it's going to say one thing, and just because you and I do a deal 6 months from now, you might have changed your purchase agreement. And same thing for my office. So it is an excellent point to make sure that folks are really going through the purchase agreement, understanding what is in there, so that way there are no surprises when you think a deal is signed and sealed, and
especially
someone's
in
leaving a refrigerator they didn't plan on.
Exactly, and especially in this absolutely litigious society we have, some of these things, it seems like people are also not letting go of deals as easily, and so sometimes you got to make sure that fine print is that yes, we're understanding it, but also that we're not dying on a hill of fine print.
Right.
That we understand with these buyers that yes, the goal in this is not to go after their earnest money. It's to close a deal, and if we need to make a concession here or there, and I kind of put that out there. Hey, listen, we may have something that pops up, and maybe it's not in the paperwork. Maybe it's something on the appraisal. Maybe it's something on the inspection. We're not. I try to have the least adversarial position as possible.
The goal is to work in the interest of your client, get them the best possible outcome that you can. And at the same time, though, having a compromise on things that need to be compromised to get to the ultimate goal of getting to the closing table, and taking care of it. I think we've got a few more minutes left. And I guess the thing to follow up our expectations with as the process goes is talking about the closing.
Yes.
We have this wonderful thing now called TRID that sort of gives the buyer a heads up 3 days or so prior to the closing. So that's a nice thing in that respects. But sometimes the sellers are sort of finding out last minute on certain things. And I think it's important too to make sure that they're understanding their closing documents ahead of time, so that way they're confident when they walk into the closing room and sit down and are prepared to sign a stack of documents.
And I think the best way to understand that is making sure that you've got a net out sheet for your sellers and a closing cost calculator for your buyers, and letting them know, hey, listen, this is generally, of course, talk to your loan officer, but this is generally what you're going to be either A, bringing to the table, or B, walking away from the table, with. And you explain to them, okay, a lot of buyers and sellers don't know about title fees. They don't understand about state transfer tax or county transfer tax. So a lot of these things that a buyer or seller may not know, I like to sit down and go over that sheet with them so they understand. Anytime a seller's paying out money, I'm going to be the first one that gets a call and say, hey, what am I paying X, Y, and Z for?
Exactly.
So if I can handle that right away and let them know, yes, you're paying an owner's policy, this is how, what that's paying for. It tends to be, I tend to have less objections when I get out in front of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's again, they now can expect what to happen and plan for it and be comfortable. Those are all things that are just important to successfully completing our transactions and taking care of our clients. That and anything we can do to start them off on the right foot and get them successfully to a closing table and with the least amount of headache is the best.
Exactly. Informed clients are happy clients.
Absolutely.
But, all right, guys, thank you so much for watching on Facebook. For those of you who are going to be listening to us on SoundCloud, Stitcher, Overcast, iTunes, wherever you happen to find your podcast, we would love for you guys to jump on in and let us know what you'd like us to discuss.
It's a great platform. Please take some time to send us, even after, if you're watching this recorded, send us a few notes on the comments and let us know things you'd like for us to talk about. Peter, myself, and Tim at GMAR, we're working pretty hard to come up with some topics that we think people will be interested in. But unfortunately, I'm not the greatest mind reader. Peter, maybe you are. So any information you'd like for us to talk about would be great. We'd appreciate that. Real quick, couple announcements. One, there's a really great relationship that GMAR just formed with a group called Relationship Farm. They are a great tool that will provide you some services as far as direct mailing, with everything from postcards to if you want to send somebody a nice little treat, like some brownies or cookies or so forth. One other thing, with the holiday season approaching, the board will be closed, obviously Christmas Day and the day after Christmas, and they will also be closed New Year's Day. So I think I'm good. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all that good stuff. We'll see you guys in 2018.
Yeah. Thank you guys for watching and listening. We will see you next time.
Take care.